Good morning, everyone. It is Friday, July 24. Welcome to the release of the Department of Education's opening plan for Nunavut schools. We will start off with Minister Joanasie, who will give a brief overview. We'll go right into questions. Dr. Patterson is also here to answer any public health-related questions for the opening plan. Thank you.
Last July 24. Tunga suguchi ilina nilari ko ministro nga ko sa kanya nga ilina be matita kanila amning atapam na tingin ni tamani nuna gumilin na bingin ni ukali malawlo ni tana apel si chaw tigil nga yuta na luta Patterson tabani miya na hamnang itulari ng mapel khutit sa harot silin na be matita kanila amning
Ula sakut Nunavut mute udang uyumi kuwek punga takwa Nunavut ilinyak bingin ni mapagtaw gutingin no pagnaw tini sakay gum nakama takko ilinyak te kutigut ilagit amaro ilinyak pilirediyo katawjut anyak taylin ingin ni amaro atanak tumit taylin ingin ni sirulak paw titawngin nang ilinyak tulagadik kunno kurang itu matakwa pagnaw tit tuwangan nakaktilugi anyak taylin ng mit atanak taylin manang mudlo Ikadok suy mata, amaro ikadok niyak suy tiwatin ni tako nang ilinyak tulagan ng mekalusin badya kurugi ilinyak to katitin no ilinyak biwido ano garwakpat angin kami garwakpat doon ni tahan na pipikaktit sinang ma ilinyak to katitin ni kalusin nang niyak kurugi ilinyak ningit at tanangit tukut amaro ikadok suktaw tiyakluti pilirib bigidaka pilirib katakatyang nakto isok tayo di maki Dr. Patterson min amaro pilira yakutingin ni takwaro ilinyak tulugan ng mo pilira katigi battawud taman na pangnawti sakit padliyatin ni ilinyak ta kutibut atoy na kong mata ilinyak bimutirun ng ningin ni tanaro pangnawti atoy na tiyang nakabuttaw sa imeri kung nakulugi at tanang tukod tana pillarew kong nila ilinyak bit amaro ilinyak te kutibut sorlo unga sige katak ila timikut amalo isa makut kanung itsyakon na kudlugi kajusin na kudlugi lutaw ikajok soktaw ng itigot tampanitak ni aggat to ni nunawang may ilinyak bit maptaktaw kanak tilugi pagnaw tingana nalo na jayvut sita mo rin nga junin amalo tidok to inakadluti ilinyak bimmi kanoy rin ang mga tar na sorlo Nubag jual na 19 imakano na rin nuk at to'y nakatuwa ko ni isa mag-ijord ni tahan na si Fudlak pa nga so pasaguso lutit amaro nubag jual naktakang idlo ni 19 nunarigijang mi baron ni asingin ni tabunabitok sa mayo nilo ni tayo may tilugo ilinyak bidimat maptungnak tut udlo tama ilinyak parduti tamay nilinyak tidimat tadlima udloy taban pinaswa ko si iluani amaro ilinyak titaw katakluti ilinyak bi iluani tahan na tungidia nubagjuak ng 19 kangik karwaklo ni nunaling mi kisyani soklo pasagus subto kakpat imaka nunaling mi ungulumit tayo man na nubagjuang ng 19 mo at tuwi na kahakpat tayo may tidlo ni ubaron ni kawali sakpad liya tidlugit tayo may nubagjuang na karuang mga takwa ilinyak mikiyo tilat matuwi ngayon nakalakto galwat kisya ni takwa kitaksang mituit amaro kubasin nilin ilinyak tit ilinyak ningi ano part-time ko kayo ilan na nga ni uglungin ni ilin niya katakayak to makaubaro ni pinaswa ko si iluani amarutakwa ikakangit nakatak si malutit ungasituk ko din nang kado si titaw kataklo ni amaru maka nunamilin niya titaw kataklo titaw taman na kado siguro nakulugo pingayungan ni tukakpat nunaring mi so tanan no magjuang ng 19 mi kano inulisak taw si mapadliya jo kak tillo ni ubalon ni temet mo pitakakun ni padliya tillugit kauji mas jangat tigo takwa kauji sauti anak dari nikut nuwat jornak pitakanging mga temet tillo ni ilinyak bedema mapinga katakajak tu udloy ilay nanginit makbut ubalon ni pingasut udloy pinaswa ko siyo iluani amma ilinyak bidimat ikakangin na katok si magajaktut taman na ungasik ko ilinyak na kato sa katak dun amma nuna may ilinyak titaw katak naktaw ato yun na titaw katak dun tana luking udlak pa nga si tamagayangan temay tilo ni soklot tana nubadwang ng 19 nuna diyo iluan itok temay rin nga tilo ni ilinyak bidima ukwak si magajaktut amaro ilinyak nakado si titaw gajaktu ungasik tukut hanggang kangin ni tilugit takwa na may mga tanong na di maka sitamaw rin nga kangang mga ta asidyak to katwa ko ni tana iswak tayo din maki Dr. Patterson at labing at tigo nalunay naktaw katagajakto tana iswak tayo din maki nalunak sitwa ko ni nunadik asidyang naktok nalunak talo ni imaka amarutak ko ilinyak bit ilinyak tulagadik ko katimalingit ubaro ni uwik ko ilinyak tulagadik kawit itigajakput ang ajok kakayaw yun amaro nalunay kayo ni kanok taman na ilinyak nakadyosigajang mga kitungakayaw ninyo Pilakakatakay ng nakto ko, ilinyak bing ni, ilinyak to lakadi, katimajingin nidlo, taman na, to sa matitsinap, ilinyak ti, amaro, ilagi, kawajimat siya, nginakakang nakmata, kano yun ang mga. Udo may motikit sugo, nalunak tayo si Madyo kang ngimat, balo na ipasay ko sa ngimata, tana, nubadyo ng 19, nadan nito yun na, Nunavut, nunalingin ni ngimat, temay madlo ilinyak bidimat bigyak uti kang nakto sifudlak pangan stage 1 amaro matuyo nga nakto tamay no ilinyak tino amaro pidagajino takwa udlok sa tingi madilugit ilinyak bit udlok sa tingi na may pigyak ng mga ta ilinyak tino ato yung nawok ilinyak tulo kadikot ikyak kabingat tigo pinaswa ko siniyag gaktunit Pidere bigay jaka, pidere katakay nakibot, ilinyak tulogadi, katimajingin ni, uwi kulo, ilinyak tulogadi ni, ilinyak bimi, sibuk kataktiyo yunit, asingin nidlo, ilinyak tulogadi mo, pidere yunit, takwa, ilinyak bidi mapak na si matya kulogi, takwa, kano ilinyak gakang ng mga do, pang nauti, iluwago. Ilinyak bit, ilinyak tulogadi, katimajingit, uwi kulo, ilinyak tulogadi ngit, tunay daw katak na ribut, atuagang ni, tahan na lo, kano, ikadok tawon ng mga ta, ilinyak bimipidiridit, takwa, at tanak tayo din ng mo, ang marulo kaya nak tayo din ng mo, at akong ng mga ni. Takwa, tukusiyo madjutit, ang marulo, piting magsautit, at ulok padlian na ribut, sa lumaksay, giyakakan ng mit, ang marulo, takwa, at tanang itukut ilinyak bimi atok tawag tu nakidaranik ko warakpat ubaron ni atwagait basko hatta nang mi sokosok tawag ko hatta nang mi umano ni tukusi yakotik sait amisui katikta hatta hangin ningi pitjutigid lugo amano takwa matuat miligay miksano atok tawag ang mga ta ilinyak iluwagot Tana ilinyak nak pigyak padya nak tidlo ni tuwa taw tuwa karuak puguida taman na ilinyak nang mi amaro ilinyak hang ilisa taw kataga hang ningin ni kisyanit taw kawli sak taw kataga hang ningi taman na ilinyak taw yun ni ilinyak ta kutibo kadusin nang nak to ilinyak tamen ni ilisay ngin nang nakidlo ti nadani karuak panuno na diulong Pilih bigi jaga atu nak si maniaki bu atuagang ni ilinyak bingi pilih jinut soklo kau di sakatak niakut lugi ilinniaq taunginni kuminnerni uvaluunni qanoq ilinniartangi suurlu angummatigakkannereaqarmangaata taakkualu qanoq suurlu angerrami ilinniarneqqalusigiaqarpat uvaluunni ilinniarbiuluagut taakkua maqbuulingaqqat tillugit teemeelingajukku pilerititauniarmiñu tamannattau tukisiumattutiqarniarivuttou qanoq taakkua ilinniarbi pilerijingit tusaamaqattat titseqattarniarmangaata suru qitungarijattinni ilinniartinni qanorlu tamanna ilinniarneq kasusittitaugalermanga atuinnaqartitaulusittau immaqaasuurlu isuma lerinikkut tamanna adjiungittukkuortillutaila tamanna Nunavut 19 amma suli ndiruugaluarpunga tamanna kalusiinnarniaqatta ammalu pileriqattaqarniarsu talinniartulerijitnit ammalu parnaksimak pagiqasuarsuta ilinniarbi mappiqpallianiartillugu ag pinasuarusi aggertuni tamaitta tabbani inutuunginatta ammalu qaulimaqulivuvunga tamanna tukisiumatsiaqasuarunnakulluta ammalu attananginnerpaakkut ilinniartequtivu kalusiqulugattigu maanna piunerpaakku qitunngarilavu sivuniksaqilanga kalusitigumagatiguila ilinniartulerajikku qulalitsiarput ikajorsortausimaninginni ammalu qinuisaatsiarsimagatsi ilinniartiit ilagiingulut ammalu ilinniartulerajit nermu pileriqataulut tabbani atsorunnertukkuuqattarsimagaluartillu kisiani attananginnerpaakkut kalusiqunaavugut ammalu neriuppunga tabbani ilinniarbi mappertillugi tungasuktittautsiarnerninginni ilinniartequtivut sivuniksattinni quyannamiimatna quana. Good morning, everyone. Nunavut. I'm happy to share with you this opening plan for Nunavut schools this morning. Keeping students, families, and staff healthy and safe is the Department of Education's highest priority. I'm confident that this plan, with its focus on health and safety, supports our ability to deliver high-quality instruction for all students, whether in class or at home. This will ensure that our students are learning in a safe, supportive environment. My department has been working closely with Dr. Patterson and his team and Nunavut education partners to develop this health and safety plan. Our students are ready to return to school, and this plan will ensure that they can do so safely. We know the importance of schools to students' physical and mental health, and we will continue to provide support to students over the coming months. Nunavut's school reopening plan identifies 4 stages that will direct school operations during COVID-19, depending on the impact of the virus in our communities. In stage 1, there are no probable or confirmed cases of COVID-19 in a community or in other communities in the region. All schools will be open full-time to all students 5 days per week, and all instruction will take place at schools. In stage 2, there are no active cases of COVID-19 in the community. However, contact tracing identifies that community members may have increased risk of exposure to COVID-19 due to 1 or more presumptive or confirmed cases in another community. Elementary schools will be open full-time 5 days per week. Middle and high schools will be open part-time 2 to 3 days per week on staggered schedules with some remote learning and potential enhanced land-based instruction. In stage 3, a community is recovering from 1 or more COVID-19 cases, and there is no evidence of further community transmission of the virus. All schools will be open part-time, 2 to 3 days per week. All schools will be on staggered schedules with some remote learning and potential enhanced land-based instruction. In stage 4, when there are active cases of COVID-19 in a community, all schools will be closed and all instruction will be conducted remotely. Any change to the stage of a community is at the discretion of the Chief Public Health Officer. If the Chief Public Health Officer announces that a community is changing stages, schools, district education authorities, or the Commission Scolaire Francophone de Nunavut will notify families to explain how instruction will look like for their child in this new stage. We will be working with schools and DEAs to ensure clear communications to students and families. As of today, there are no confirmed or probable cases of COVID-19 in any Nunavut community. This means that all schools are in stage 1 and will reopen to students and staff as scheduled. All school start dates for students are posted on the Department of Education website. Over the coming weeks, my department will continue to work closely with DEAs and the CSFN, school leaders, and other education partners to ensure that all schools are prepared for each stage outlined in our plan. Schools, DEAs, and the CSFN will be provided with guidelines and a comprehensive toolkit for school staff on how to implement health and safety measures. This will include information about training and implementation of enhanced cleaning protocols, safe operation of school food programs, guidelines for busing, information on assemblies and gatherings, and the use of masks in schools. As we begin this new school year, we will be focused on learning, instruction, and assessment. Students will continue to learn, and teachers will continue to teach, no matter what stage a community is in. My department is developing guidelines for school staff on assessments of learning loss, recovery learning, and techniques for teaching in a blended in-school or at-home environment. This will include information on how and when school staff will communicate with students to provide instruction and resources to support student mental health during these uncertain times. I look forward to continuing work with our education partners to ensure we are well prepared going into the new school year. We are all in this together, ensuring we are making informed decisions, safe decisions for our students. We all want the best for our children and their future. The Department of Education appreciates the support and patience that students, families, and our education partners have shown to date during these challenging times. Stay safe, everyone, and we look forward to welcoming students back in the coming weeks. Thank you.
Rajni Sharma, Nunavut News. According to the plan, stage 4, when community transmission of COVID-19 occurs, I'm just wondering, it says that learning packages will be made for K to 12. When will the packages actually be made? How far in advance?
Rajni Sharma, Nunavut, Pivalaya, Kunita, Napamnautit, Sydney, Sitamangani. Malitaw gailin ni nunalin ni siya mapalayo hakata ko ilin na ako ti pigya lisa tunod kutin ni litwa mut ilin na ako tingi katisok taw gayang ngatangi kami hangat ko tako sibang nga gupiya kayo taw sa Malacan.
Kulit na mi takwa soklo taman protein lugu taman na idin na utaw tong na tong kami hakasok taw kato dilaw mata amaro tayo man na atok si majatin ni atokluta amaro ilinna kutigisi magatigo pag napatli katakon ng nakto ilisay tana maligluni kasi anitaw ikajok taw jo kanna to pa ilinnak bingni nadani to na ikajok taw katakon ng na medyo pag nagyakato patatamak ko ng ang kabanni pidara jagon nakto. Thank you for the question. Our experience in the springtime when we close schools is a good. We have experience in developing this learning packages for home, so it's a practice that we're continuing to build on, and it will. There's a system already in place that allows for that, so we'll be working with the school staff to plan ahead in terms of when a case hits a community in advance of that, if that's the case, that a community moves to stage 4. So, and with that, if a school needs support on developing those learning packages, we'll ensure that there's supports in place for that to happen.
Will the learning packages be evaluated by the teachers?
Tako ilinna ko titsang kami ilinna titsa yun ako isaktaw katkayakan.
Tako ilinnak taw katang nakto ang kami gurakpat ilinnak biluan kawi saktaw katang nakto tamaro taman nakado si gutiginak taw nuta ngulyame ilinnak na pigang ning pigaglo. Yes, all learning packages would be assessed moving forward. It won't be the same as when our past experience in April when the learning packages were not assessed at that time, but going forward they would be.
Just since we're talking about learning packages, will they be different from the ones that were done in the past?
Tako ilinna ko tiyang ko jo katkayak timitsano ajiging ilang itay ko sana jaw law ko king unitin.
And by that I mean, like, how will they be improved? How will they look like?
Kano piu sigak taw naka to balo kano taw to kam naka.
Takwa sogdo khubbasin ni maliglutit takwa jigi khat jangem medyo amaro kisani sogdo kawde saktaw khattaga naktilugit sogdo ilisima daga khaptangin ni narunay taksima vagi khattang nang medyo takwa ilisay ilinnak tangin ni ilitaw garo ang mga ilinnak ta kutingin no taman na kanong kawde saktaw nakpigya ang mga the learning packages being when they will have to be evaluated, it depends on their grade level, on where they're at in their learning program, so it depends on that, but of course, as we mentioned, the assessment piece is new and will be implemented from here on in. So this is something that might look different from when learning packages went out in the springtime.
Okay, just one more question. In the situation where the school closes, what has been planned to continue the school breakfast programs?
Tako ilinna be matuyaw kaya kanila nakatahan upam na sima visita ko nerititsi khattaw to ilinna tino.
As far as I'm concerned, schools would be closed. All schools would be closed when there's COVID-19 in the community, and that would include school food program. Tekwa manam tukishima jakut ilinnabi matusima gajaktut niwadjor na 19 taon na panunaring mi amarutak ko ilinnabi ma suglo ilinnak be matusima ninga kisulima matusima gajakto nakilaganik mo baloni asingin.
So just to be clear, that means that no plans have been made yet to deal with the school breakfast programs when COVID does happen and schools are closed?
Panna sima yo hangit ilinner binne nirikay guti yo hatta Nunavut journal 19 hatta lerneqa ilinner bi matu yo patata ko tu inagunne rayaqtu.
I think this might be better suited for Dr. Patterson.
Sorry, Roger, can you say it again?
I'm just wondering what's happening with the school breakfast programs. Like, are we planning ahead of time in case COVID does enter the community and schools are closed?
Tako ilinner binne nirikay guti yo hatta ilinner binne matu yo hat simal neqad. Panna simangilasi.
Thanks. We still have work to do on that. It is a goal to ensure that if we have to respond to COVID in a community, that all Nunavut get support, including children, and try and keep going, or keep these this work going in some fashion. We've just got to figure out how to do it that's safe for the children, but also safe for the people who would be involved in providing the support. Thanks.
Sulitaman na pilireango gyali kisani tora gahalo aktigutay ma kamagi yahat sa hatta ng Nunavut journal 19 takalang neqat Nunavut mita ko kayo suktawin na hulugi sugu sila tamalo pilire hatigit sa lutitay ma kawiga so kayak to kanu wala taw sa ng mga tatakwa tanak tumitay lititaw luti sugu si tamalo tamakko tunyo kay hatak to niriyat sa yuni.
Megan Dooling, Nunatsiak News. Will breakfast programs continue where we are right now?
Megan Dooling, Nunatsiak Kunita ko la kumisaktit sa katam ni kayo sila nga bamanoy.
You mean at the moment with
Yeah.
no COVID? Yeah, they'll continue for now unchanged.
Man na kayo sila nga yo asid saktaw sa mangiloti.
I think my next questions are probably for Minister Joanasie. You said that learning packages will be evaluated in case students have to learn from home. In the spring, the reasoning for learning packages not being evaluated because you acknowledge that not every student has the same type of support at home. So I'm wondering what plans in place you have for students who might not have a space to work at home or who might not have parents or guardians available to help them with their learning packages.
Tay mga kagabita ko ang kanilin na ako titsaw gayak tuwang matuyaw yung hata na kata ko ako isaktaw hata lang yung mata sibulak pa amin alo na sila sa malutilo ta ko ilin na palego tingin ni pang nasimayo kang mga ta ko ale kano init sa hangito do balo ang ayok kami ni kayok tit sa hangito kano ikayok taw hata kayak mata
ko yun na may takwa ukakago may lahat so ilinyak bimi pilirajit namaro idisayit pwede magsakti-taw ng mata at huwag hakti-taw ritidlo takwa ikajak-saktaw gahang ningin umaro kali-saktaw gahakatang niyang ningi pidyo-tigid-dugo taman na adjiging mago upang sangurak dumi takwa kali-sakatang niyang medyo malo ito kasi gahakatang luti pwede gahakatang luti maka takwa kitong mga gajalo ubalunin niyaktiyo ang ajak karik pag baloni pakkajingin ni takwa ikajak saktaw ga nakpakajang itaw isimugayaw ga katong nang medyo. Thank you for the question. As I mentioned, guidelines and training will be provided to school staff around supporting students when they're learning from home and when we have to assess learning packages going forward. This will also be highlighted and ensure that those that need extra supports, we provide as much as we can when they're learning from home, and if we're dealing with the students, parents or guardians, we need to identify, and we'll have communication from the school staff and the school team around how best to support those most that need individualized student support plans, for example, and specialized services. Thank you.
So just so I understand, students who might need more support because of circumstances at home, they'll be identified and accommodations will be made for that?
Tukusiget sa kanirlugo tayo may kayusok tao kan nakakayak kasi tamagkuang kami ito'y kayusok tao kan nakataon na hulugilin namin.
Tayo may nakaswang na ito pipilimatin ni takwa atuin na yut atuin na kunak ningi amaloy kasok kan na kuti atuin na patag atuin na titawalak to. Yes, that would be provided as best as we can from the department standpoint and what's available and resources that are available at the school level. Those supports will be made available as far as we can.
When schools open, as we are now with no confirmed cases of COVID-19, will sports teams and extracurricular activities outside of school, will they go ahead?
Mana yuta ko nupa Nunavut 19 tahangin ning ano ilin na be mate khata tamat ko pingwa khatak to amalo katut je khatigi galay kayo sigon nak titaw gayak ka.
Takwa soglo amisyo katit takhatak titaw khatak ulong ito galawat kasi ani taman na soglo ilinyak view sila tago nga juwit ilinyak tulogidi katimajingit kanok to putigi gadak tangit amaro taman na isimagsaksayo ko tiga kagadak tangit takwa luta Patterson ato ko yung nito malit siya kalawang mga ata. The extracurricular activities outside of the school program, the DEAs will have authority on what schools can and cannot be used in line with the Chief Public Health guidelines.
Speaking of DEAs, can you describe how DEAs were consulted in development of this plan?
Tako na nalinili na to lagi katimaying kano to sa be khatala katako pang noti akit sok taw tilugi.
Ko yan namin tamakko linnak to lagi katimaying ni ukalaw tikko katimakta simalaktago hamas waqtak sagut tamalo to sakpat liaga swak simaluta kano ito ni isimalaw takang mga ata ubalo ni kano ikasok taw gahakayang mga ata apak ko tingin ni kiyo swak taksuta tako nga amalo tukusiga swak takidluta tana iswak sa yung Dr. Patterson ilaw katak si magidlo ni tako nga pangnaw tini atwagin ni naluna dyan katak si matillo ni taman na ulumi mo kasi sa inako tigin ang mayago sigunik sa tino taman na pilaka katigi si magigod amalo pilaka katigi katay na kumanak tabo nilinak talo kasi katimaling. When schools closed in the spring, we started having regular conference calls with DEAs just to hear some of the challenges that are being faced by communities and schools, but also planning ahead on what schools reopening would look like and trying to answer as best we can their questions. We've held several conference calls where we exchange information and have opportunities for DEAs to share their concerns or challenges, and including Dr. Patterson in a number of the calls as well to ensure that there's a direct communication from his office and DEAs. And we want to continue this going forward, and this is an ongoing process that will continue to communicate and collaborate with DEAs.
How many teachers do you still have to hire in order to have enough teachers to fill all the vacancy gaps this year?
Hatsinilid na kitsilin kanayak tara hakasita ko ay nutaw gali na matsakulugi.
Kuya na may takwa taman na idisay ni kanayak titara hang niwato na kalwak si mga ito taman na niwadjong na 19 marulo mo tikit sigo tamani palo 30 maka tabani Nunavut ilwani suri inugali abit ko nakako kitong may ni pingasuluti kiwadlang may 8 nguluti tamana kikita ni 19 tana makasi dito nakahang mayo Afghani kimak pagutigo 74 ngulok si madluti takwa idisay inuga kalok si mayo tait si mayo tilugo it does not appear that COVID-19 has had an impact on educator recruitment this year. As of today, there's roughly 30 educator positions that are vacant throughout the territory, and these are NTA positions, 3 in the Iqaluit, 8 in Iqaluit, and 19 in Iqaluit. And those numbers can very easily change as recruitment is ongoing and schools start to reopen. But in comparison to last time, this year, there were 74 educator positions vacant.
How many teachers are currently in isolation in the hubs down south?
Hachiwa ma nailin na titsi ito yung may veneno tu kay nakahambing may titayo kalonani.
Tadna nasa tingan ni kawji mangitunga maro ukakon na tuin naksun sokdo tamakwa nuno sila tani ngak si majid ikajok taw hatang mata teko na at inutuga titaw si manikko tadna at design na nga niya titaw hatak tu ilisay udlo 14. I can't say what the number is, but what I can tell you is that teachers, like all Nunavut, they're not defined as critical workers, so therefore they undergo the same 14-day isolation process as with all Nunavut.
Survey, Radio Canada. So in stages 1, 2, and 3, you're requesting for enhanced cleaning. Will you provide any funding to the schools to help them buy the cleaning supplies that they need?
Sorry, I didn't get your name.
Matisse Harvey.
Matisse Harvey, CBC na alaw sa Iqaluit. Takwa hotin nili malitaw gahan na kaya si 1, 2, and 3. Salamasay kan nira khataya nira kawgabita ko kina yakti ko ikayok taw lak takununga
Koyan nami takwa idinyak be salamasat taw khataya ang ningin atwa gamne sakit to kang nang mayut takununga taw khatto nang mata salamasay dino amar pidim maksaw karon nang na gudlutit tamakwa atwa gait han atok taw ga ang mga ta kasi ani takko ilinyak tado kasi katimajingit manak kina jakotumini atok titagon naktugalawat sarumaksay ng mut amaro kasi ani amigak sito ako ti taman na nanunay jaktaw padliagon nakadlunay kina ritiwi kajok tawga katok pata kawisak nang mayugon. Thank you for the question. All schools will be receiving enhanced cleaning guidelines, and these are for custodians, and all schools custodians will be provided with training and support to implement those guidelines. And in terms of financial resources to support that, as of now, we're DEAs and CSFN, they can use their current budgets to allocate funds specifically for enhanced cleaning, and we'll, if there's a need for increased or additional funds, we'll have to identify that and see what resources that we have financially, and or tap into other options, other sources.
Next question is for Dr. Patterson. So in stage 2 and 3, can you explain us why exactly elementary schools would be allowed to stay at full capacity in comparison with middle and high school?
Tako atulingin ni 2 amalu 3 ukasa karon nakita ko mikiyutaw naksailin na tilin nangin na kunna kayang mga ta amalu tako hitian ito amalin ilin na bealo milane nakko kayak tilogi.
Sure. As we've learned over the last 6 months, coronavirus, the risk of severe complications or severe infection gets worse as you get older and older, and so it's a balance of that risk that for the younger children being at less risk of infection, less risk of complications, it doesn't make sense to cut them off from school and socialization, and whereas for the older children, it would be easier for them to cope with reduced or altered learning schedules, and they're also at greater risk of complications. So it's balancing the risks of COVID and the harms of closing schools. Thanks.
Haisima katatak ko na nitakhiw si Mayuni pinga so yok to nita man no wadyo nak 19 pinaksaw gun nang atamak ko ukiyo ngi ila ukiyo hak inna ko palya naksaw yunot tay may manalimugitit sin gya khatta ulo kaya nak ningin nik tamak ko ulo kaya nak tumingin naksaw gun nang atatamak ko mikiyu taw naksait ato ta hakayang mailin na ako nek titaw kay naklutik kisa nilitit tamak ko vikaro palya yo tay mataw kanwit changin naksaw news sa tuwid nang atailin na kitawangin naksaw luti kamalo ulo kaya naktumin naksaw gun nang atatay may mat nalimugilak to kaso sa mayabot naman na ulo kaya nakningay sumagilog.
So just one last question. So the transition between each stages will be at the discretion of the CPHO, but can you tell us like how long it would take to de-escalate from a stage to another? Approximately, or what criteria you use?
Takwa kano nalo na tayo hatang ningi hutin niliri nalo na hatta lang agabi biana han nang ituliri yung makiuluti kano tigi hatta lang abatakwa hubasigi akpalya hatta kun nang ningi atta nangin ningi malitugi.
It's not possible to really give a time frame. It's more realistic to talk about what would be some of the criteria and the factors we'd be using in making those decisions. I'll let you interpret that before I get going.
Dahil makakang gayak ni nga ni nalo nakto ang maluta ko kano pimariyo jud ang malo isumalo taw gali isumalo katta gayak to kisu at makosakyo maningi malit tuwi.
Escalating from a lower stage to a higher stage would be pretty easy if we get a notification on Monday night that there's a case of COVID in a community. We would probably go straight to the 4th stage until we know what's going on, and figuring that out, doing the contact tracing and the background work to identify or rule out community transmission may only take a couple of days, but it may take a week or longer, depending upon the community and the circumstances.
Lalo nang itseak tuloy tayo mga kaya yoham na kanubadyo anak tuloy may kimaapasid tuwi tilugo kupasireak tao sa tiga yakto kaya kaptao to akot ta solo naggadyaw may kaya gutta tayo mga nunalin nino badyo anak takto kaksi magyangan itan na sita mga nut sa tiga yakto tayo may linga gayak so ni kaya lang initin ni kaya sakpalyangin na gayak tabot ang malo kikun ni katisi yumini yung mga ta kaya sakpalyang tilo ta ang malulo ni makto ni tana kamagayaw kung naktukasya ni kaya pinasa ako silimanik ang matanulo ni taman na kamagayaw gayak to.
The one thing we can say for sure is that it takes 28 days from the last person being infectious. 28 days later is when you can say that a COVID outbreak is over. That's that 2 incubation period that we always look for. So going from stage 2 back to stage 1 is actually going to be the longest period of a month or longer. Thanks.
Malunalo na kanel luguta ko loy 28 kaya naksimam matata na kingulak pa kaya yaw viminino yun no petyo nakta sa malawak til luguta man timinganingin na ni kung ano petyo tigil lugu no badyo nak tana de ako ne nak pa kung gayak to matyo wala ning ita khutinilik to mik one mo takkilimame ungatan lo ni tano takya kayak to.
Jackie McKay, CBC News. My questions are for Minister Joanasie. Minister, last week you said that the draft documents were published too early before the DEAs had time to weigh in. The document we see today looks exactly the same as the draft documents. Where is the input from the DEAs?
Jackie McKay, CBC Connect Minister Joanasie, pinasako siyo Jumeo, kayo gawita ko, sibulik pa siyo titikas mayo sa kitaw sa kailoan ng kata nunalinilid na tuloy kayo ko katimayingin. Tu sa lauk tinagit, dan nasa inap siya nga dako lekano, ukaw sa kakbakak sa mabatatso mo.
Kaya namin itatso mo nga pakuting ano takwa, pinasako sa kalakto tinitay na tatso mo nito ang ngutong. Tusak bikakak si magatta rin naktulo ka di kati malingin ni tayo kang ni April, May, June tapo na kati makatigi katak si magatta malulo mi mo takwa uka katigi katak si manakija ko atok sugit takwa pag nauti sak kasi magattigo kasi anito so lutaman na pag nauti ko tana to na galak tilo ni tukusi madutik kanang nito so lo apak kutigi jaw gajag Apakutiyo gajuk tu ni himakai taigo koko sakay migat taw taikan itaw narunat si mafadliam mi itaw idin naktulo kadi apakutiyo katak si mayangit taman na tu kasi matya kun khudlu tayla tamay ni Nunavut ma ajigin ito ni apakutiyo gajang waktu jakto ni apaksuk si magatta amalo idin naktulo kadi apaksuk si mamata. Thank you for the question. Last week wasn't the only time that we spoke with the DEAs around this. It's been an ongoing process and up to date, leading up to the release of the draft. Their consideration have been taken into account. And the DEAs have been asking quite a bit of questions, which understandably so. Many people have questions, and this is why we've also developed, not just in conjunction with this plan, frequently asked questions, which a lot of those questions were from DEAs and that we thought might be asked at this time. So those are a lot that we worked with in DEAs, and this is again something that will continue. And I identified in my response to the Iqaluit DEA that there's communication gaps that we wanted to fill, so we want to improve upon that going forward.
So this four-stage plan, you're saying that it does have input from the DEAs in it?
Tana sita mga ni matapalya ng milata ko ilin na tuloy kayo katimayingin nito sa kabakak sa mga ilulingin no.
Tana pag notibo sak kasi mayo katimoti gajaw katak si majut amaro ukasi gajaw katak si majut apakotyo katak si majut isi magijaw luti amaro taman na ila gajaw katak si majut ilin nak tulo katimajingit taman na pang nauti akasok padliadat. As I stated before we developed the draft, we've had a number of meetings, teleconferences, and going back and forth. Emails have been circulated with DEAs and asking for feedback around how school reopening would look like, what they view as concerns or challenges that they might face. And so with this plan, this is what we have in place now, considering the input that they've provided to date. And as I state, this is an ongoing process that we'll continue going forward with.
In this four-stage plan, depending on a risk of a community to COVID, it could be green, stage 1 here, and a different community, it could be stage 4. How will you ensure fair education for all of Nunavut when some schools may be closed and some may be open?
Tako nunaliat sige hatta jayo changi magtata ko matuyok tawalya ningin no kutin nilagay so luno wadyo nak tuhan nakasi ay nunalin ni tamani pigali tayo nagloti lang isita mga nilagloti kano tako tayo matsay na ilin na titaw katakon na kayang mata.
Kaya namin tamak ko maka adji nginyo tako si tamay nga kanitiluwi tayo may nga garawak tilugo taman na ilin na Kado si ting nakaswang nakatigo, pipili matigo, at tanang ituk ko walo, ang maruro ka ng ituk ko, tahan na isa magijaw nakpa gahang nakto kisiyani taman na hano ilin nak temeling agarok tilugo Nunavut ng 19 pivili matin no kasusitin nakasong naktavut imakaso taman na adjiyong ito ko tiluta so ilangi ilin nak biluwagut amaran angin kaman ni taman na ilin nak nakalusit itaw nak tilugo kisiyani takwa pang nasimaya atok lugi kuptin nakpangan ilin nak nakalusit tigasokto we are in whether, regardless of which stage a community is at, these plans are with the minds of an intent of having quality education delivered, whether it's in class or from home. So it's with the intent that schools will maintain and deliver the education program to the best of their abilities, provided the context of this pandemic, COVID-19. This is the first time we're going through this type of experience, so we're very mindful and thankful for the patience and people that have shown to date, and recognizing too that learning from home in a blended situation, it's not going to be the same as all in-class instruction, so we'll have to deal with it, whichever stage that community is at in a school. But education, the quality of our education, we want to maintain at the highest possible extent, despite these conditions.
Nunavut educators have already spoken out about how COVID's created education gaps for Nunavut students. If we're in a situation where we have blended education again from at school and at home, is your department prepared to shorten those gaps, give students who don't have access to things like internet and computers those resources?
Nunavut me tamako ilina titsiji ukhasimalere matataman Nunavut joanna ima khano amiga silang nakata ilangi tamako ilina tamini kamalu tamako katitaw simayunang kami ilina bimelo ilina katalam nakata khano pilirisi naluna siga yakata ko ilina te nalimugi tsale pallagun ng mga ata ilangi lopijutit sa khangito so loki akibiko ko tinakano ikayuktaw gayakan.
Economic pumatakwa solo taman na idi sa kayo si mama solo idin naktaw ni community kanok pitagaran nak pitigo idin nakto na kayo luta takwa temen ni kung ano idi sa di ato aga titaw nang medyo amaro ato kun naktitaw ti kanok ito ni taman na idin naktaw ni community isu magayaw ti balon ni kanok taman na idin naktangin ni ang utigakan na rahang ng mga ata taman na lukaw sa tawag ng mimat kasi anitan na atok manak taba marapang na si manibutay man. We have developed specific guidelines, and there will be a toolkit for schools that focuses on recovery of learning and assessment. So when we're talking about learning loss, that's we will be addressing that with our school teams, and there are guidelines in place to ensure that the outcomes that students need to reach, how will that be achieved? So those questions have been asked, and the guidelines being developed with that in mind.
I didn't hear anything in that about providing those who don't have access to internet and computers with those tools. Is that part of it?
To sa katangin matakwa kanon lato inaw titaw yak mga taso leke ikakivik ko kuti taman na ilagayaw gayaka.
Mamaya notan isa magsaksok padlega sa waktugut nadira ko tiksakak padlega sa waktugut kanok tamakwa maka angin ni piliritaw na tuwak pata balon ni ikakivik ko na takangit balon ni kakasaw lakangin ni tan isa magsaksok tiga padlega ko malnadira ko tinakimik pulutan. I think, sorry for that, I forgot to touch on that. The department, we're currently exploring options around how to increase student support and access to technology and internet if a case of COVID arrives in the community.
Stage 1, since there's no social distancing, are you going to require students to wear masks?
Tana sa bulak pa mekutin nilingan ni 1 meter ko ilid na update. Hanigilo at teliga ham na munalo na taw sa mga mama to as makataka kakayak ha.
Koyan na may tan man nakut soglo idin yakti pillat taga hak tijangit tabut matuani balon ni miligang ato hak sima at tijangit tabu man nakut kasi ani ajong naksitwa ko ni soglo Ungasigi kataga hang nak taman na asidjira hak to hakpat takwa kisani nare gatung itu takwa to tigitu nang logo kay ukiuli 13 nuk takwa atan nukaksyon naksay tamak ko nang atoga katjang itu kisani maka uto tigitu nang logo kay baskong na arutit ilangi takwa kubasin ni 13 mo ubaloni ang eduksyon naksay teme matong atok titaw hatakon na tuin nagali kasi ani taman na takwa matong ni ubaloni miligang ni atok hatakon jingin nang me teme hatajang kalwakto maka nammin biguma ningi Thank you for that question. In general, the use of masks is not recommended for children. However, at the discretion of the Chief Public Health Office, there may be some instances where mask use may be required. It's non-medical mask use. So in some instances, students under the age of 13 may not be expected to wear masks. However, 13 years and older, as an example, on school buses might be asked or required to wear masks. But if students are asked to wear a mask in a specific situation, parents would be notified and masks would be provided. And just on the last note, we will not be discouraging mask use, and it's an option that we're open for staff and or students if they so choose. We're not discouraging it.
Thank you. This is my last question. In this plan, capacity in schools could drop down to 40%. What directions have you given DEAs to choose who gets to go to school and who doesn't?
Tako na ni pam nautin ni tako ilid na kaya na to 40% tingin no nakngata tako nunalid na ilid na to lagi ko kati mayingi sumasaksi ko ta kakayak to tamak kuningan na ilid na tako na na mangata.
Kaya na may tako nakatatawa katok pata ikakgait amaro sordo tako ilinyak tit kubasin ningi imakataw tuktaw katak na may amisyo ningi tutigito ng logo kisani tanna isimagajaw katakalakto Ungasigi kataga nak balon ni taman na imaka isimaran nak tumit to kalong nak panunaring niwad na 19 mi taman na ilinya tulagi pilagi katiga jak tamakon ng atokon nak tangin ni atokon na hulubi. The staggered schedules that would be implemented, it depends on the space requirements, and some classes will be dealing with in cohorts. So this is where some cohorts might be, depending on the numbers, they accommodate schedules and stagger them accordingly, keeping in mind the risk of COVID in the community. So this would be work that would collaborate with the Chief Public Health Office and DEAs going forward. Thanks, Julia.